Hello. Color has been one of humanity's oldest companions, from the first pigments applied on cave walls to the purples symbolizing royal power, from the tones brought to life on artists' canvases to the chemical paints of industry. The journey of colors is, in essence, the journey of humankind. Paint has not only colored surfaces, it has been etched into the memory of beliefs, identities, emotions, and societies. In this journey, behind a drop of red, we see blood, behind blue, the sky, and behind green, hope. The history of paint is, in fact, the history of human self-expression. Color emerging from the cave. The birth of the first pigments. Natural pigments such as clay, charcoal, hematite, and cave paintings. The history of paint begins with humanity's perception of its environment. Color was not merely an aesthetic choice, but also a tool of communication. In this sense, the earliest uses of paint carry traces of human thought. Archaeological evidence shows that the first pigments date back to the Paleolithic era. Cave paintings from around 40,000 years ago should be regarded not only as works of art, but also as tools for ritual, symbolism, and the transmission of knowledge. The paints of this era were made entirely from natural materials: hematite, red iron oxide, manganese for black, charcoal, clay, limestone, and animal fats formed the basic ingredients of these early color mixtures. These materials were applied to cave walls using bones or wooden sticks. For example, the figures found in France's Lascaux caves are enriched with red, yellow, and black tones. Most depict game animals, while some consist of abstract patterns, showing that color use was not merely decorative, but also a narrative device. The preparation of pigments is also fascinating, given the conditions of the time. Minerals were ground into powder using stones, then mixed with binders such as animal fat or saliva. This mixture was applied to surfaces using fingers or primitive brushes. In some caves, colors were applied using a spraying technique, blowing the pigment from the mouth. These methods indicate that early artists were highly creative and deliberate in their work. This early use of paint represents not only an aesthetic expression, but also traces of a worldview. The figures rendered in color on cave walls reflect humanity's admiration, fear, and beliefs regarding nature. They also constitute some of the earliest forms of knowledge sharing within communities. In this context, color is not merely a visual tool. It is memory, identity, and the culture being passed down. Ancient colors: the pharaohs' blue, the Greeks' white. Symbolic and technical use of paint in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Ancient civilizations used color not only for decoration, but also as a symbol of social hierarchy, divinity, and cosmic order. At that time, knowledge of color was where chemistry met art. Particularly in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, sophisticated techniques were developed for both pigment production and application. For the Egyptians, colors represented Dipfun powers. Blue symbolized the Nile, the sky, and divine protection, making it one of the most precious colors. The pigment known as Egyptian blue is one of the first synthetic colors created in a laboratory setting throughout history. This calcium-copper silicate-based pigment was widely used in sarcophagi, sculptures, and frescoes. Green represented rebirth and the power of nature. Red was associated with life energy and danger. Black symbolized fertility and the cycle of death, and white stood for purity and cleansing. In ancient Greece, color use emphasized mathematical harmony and symmetry. Contrary to popular belief, Greek temples, sculptures, and vases were not entirely white but richly colored. Red figure and black figure ceramics demonstrate the era's colorful narrative techniques. The Greeks generally collected pigments directly from nature, ground them into powders, and mixed them with wax, egg white, or water to create paint. In ancient Rome, color was directly linked to status. Purple was reserved exclusively for senators and emperors. This color, extracted from the murex sea snail of the eastern Mediterranean, was extremely labor-intensive and costly to produce. Colors also played a defining role in religious ceremonies, military uniforms, and public buildings. During this period, color knowledge became more than aesthetic. It represented political, religious, and economic power. The production of pigments was a craft, and their use became an ideology. In this way, color became a tool that appealed both to the eye and to authority. Painting with the spirit of the Middle Ages. Religion, alchemy, and colors. Divine meanings, manuscripts, stained glass, and social color codes. In the Middle Ages, color was more than a visual element. It was a medium for divine meaning, theological interpretation, and class distinction. This era, marked by the peak influence of Christianity in the West and the prominence of Islamic civilizations in science and art in the East, highlighted the spiritual and symbolic power of color like never before. Illuminated manuscripts were among the most refined uses of color in the Middle Ages. Created in monasteries, these works used pigments for both visual appeal and the emphasis of sanctity. Gold leaf, ultramarine blue, from lapis lazuli, cinnabar red, green malachite. Each pigment carried special meaning and often came from expensive sources. Lapis lazuli, imported exclusively from Afghanistan, was considered the heavenly blue and frequently used in depictions of the Virgin Mary. In stained glass, color combined with light to create a sacred narrative. Gothic cathedrals featured vast stained glass windows where blue and red dominated, visually bridging themes of sin and salvation, earthly life, and the divine realm. Glassmakers achieved these colors using metal oxides, which were then melted at high temperatures and cast into molds. Alchemy also contributed to the color world. Alchemists saw color transformations as signs of natural processes, symbolizing the purification of substances and their transformation into gold. Black, nigredo, represented decay and beginnings, white, albedo, symbolized purification, and red, rubido, signified final completion. Alchemy indirectly advanced pigment production techniques. Colors also served as a tool for class distinction. Lilac, purple, and sapphire blue were exclusive to the aristocracy, while peasants were largely restricted to natural and muted tones. These class-based color codes were even regulated by law in some areas, prohibiting lower classes from wearing certain colors. In short, in the Middle Ages, color was a cultural structure linking theology, symbolism, craftsmanship, and social hierarchy. Each hue carried meaning, and each figure communicated a statement of belief. The shades of kings, the cost of purple, indigo, and red, tracing precious pigments like murex shells, lapis lazuli, and cochineal insects. Throughout history, certain colors became truly royal, not only for their brilliance, but also for the rarity of their sources, the labor-intensive production, and the power they symbolized. Purple, indigo, and red were particularly notable, symbols of civilizations, markers of wealth, and sometimes carriers of religious or sacred meanings. Purple, for thousands of years, was essentially the color of the throne. Its production relied on Tyrian purple pigment, extracted from the murex sea snails of the eastern Mediterranean. The process was extremely arduous. Thousands of snails were crushed to obtain just 1 gram of pigment. This made purple exclusive to kings, emperors, the clergy, and the highest aristocracy. In the Roman Empire, only the emperor was permitted to wear a purple toga. Any violation could be punishable by death. Indigo was derived from the semi-precious stone lapis lazuli, found only in the Badakhshan region of Afghanistan. Its extraction, transportation, and processing were extremely difficult, making it even more valuable than gold. During the Renaissance, lapis lazuli became the ultramarine pigment, frequently used in depictions of the Virgin Mary, reinforcing the religious and cultural significance of color. Artists often had to secure special patrons to afford this precious pigment. Red, produced from various sources across civilizations, was most vibrantly obtained from cinnabar, mercury sulfide, kermes, a type of insect, and, most importantly, cochineal insects. Cochineal, brought to Europe from the Americas in the 16th century, revolutionized textile dyeing. The intense red derived from these insects adorned royal cloaks, papal robes, and flags. What these 3 colors shared was not only their costliness, but also their association with power, sanctity, and privilege. Codes determining which color represented what were reinforced over time through customs, laws, and traditions. Each hue was more than a tone. It conveyed a political message when worn, applied, or painted. The golden age of color in the Renaissance. A flourish in art. Layers of color in paintings, oil techniques, and the secrets of the masters. The Renaissance was not merely an intellectual awakening. It was the reconstruction of the visual world through color. Beginning in 14th century Italy, this cultural revolution aimed to depict human figures, light, shadow, depth, and color with greater fidelity to nature. During this period, color became not just decoration, but a fundamental element of narrative expression. Renaissance artists consciously used color to shape emotion, symbolism, and compositional rhythm. Leonardo da Vinci created depth and perspective through tonal gradations. Raphael conveyed serenity and sanctity through harmonious palettes, and Michelangelo heightened a dramatic effect with vibrant and contrasting colors. Colors became increasingly sophisticated. In addition to natural pigments, chemically enhanced mixtures were developed. The advancement of oil painting techniques allowed pigments to be applied in brighter, more durable, and more controllable layers. Artists could layer colors to render light reflections, textures, and depth more realistically. The source of pigments remained critically important. Ultramarine, for instance, was so expensive that patrons often funded its use specifically. In some works, the economic value of pigments even surpassed the value of gold leaf applied in the same painting. This period also reflected early understanding of color's psychological impact. Red symbolized passion, blue conveyed tranquility, and yellow represented divine light. Such symbolism was particularly prominent in religious artworks. In summary, the Renaissance was a golden age where color was not merely aesthetic, but a scientific, technical, and philosophical tool. Paint became not just pigment, but a palette of thought and expression. Industry and synthetics. The color revolution. Through chemistry, aniline dyes, artificial pigments, and mass production. In the 19th century. The 19th century was not only an age of machines, but also an era in which colors became industrialized. Pigments painstakingly sourced from nature over centuries began to be synthesized in chemical laboratories. This revolution transformed not only art, but also the color palette of textiles, printing, cosmetics, and everyday life. It all began in 1856, when William Henry Perkin, an 18-year-old English chemist, accidentally discovered the first synthetic pigment, mauvine, aniline purple, while experimenting with purple dyes. This discovery marked a turning point in the history of color. Mauvine was brighter, more durable, cheaper, and more accessible than natural purple pigments, paving the way for mass production of colored fabrics in industrialized countries. Soon, the German chemical industry took the stage. Companies like BASF, Bayer, and Hoechst developed hundreds of synthetic pigments, particularly aniline dyes. These pigments were not only more durable, but also more vibrant and diverse. Colors like indigo, purple, and red, once reserved for aristocrats, became accessible to the middle class. This transformation was more than aesthetic. Colors became essential for mass production, brand identity, and even propaganda. Dyes were now a fundamental input for textile factories. Color printing in books, magazines, and posters was made possible by these new synthetic pigments. Fashion, advertising, and interior design were completely reshaped by this newfound accessibility of color. However, these advances also cast shadows. Some synthetic dyes had toxic effects, raising environmental and occupational health concerns. By the mid-20th century, safer and eco-friendly pigments became a necessity. In short, from the 19th century onwards, colors spread beyond the canvas to the entire world. Pigments had moved from artisans' brushes to industrial production lines, laying the foundation for the vibrant color landscape of the modern era. Color and politics, propaganda, flags, and identity. The role of color in nationalism, ideology, and social messaging. Throughout history, color has served as a carrier of collective identities and political messages. From the 18th and 19th centuries onward, with the rise of modern nation-states and ideologies, color became more than a symbol. It became a tool of social engineering. From flags to posters, military uniforms to party banners, color evolved into a powerful language guiding the masses. For example, red symbolized socialism and revolution in some regions, and blood, courage, or nationalism in others. The red cap of the French Revolution later took on new meanings in the Soviet star and the red background of China's flag. The same color, in the late Ottoman period and the Republic of Turkey, became a sign of national identity as the main tone of the flag. Blue represented nobility and order in European monarchies, while white conveyed peace, purity, and surrender. Green evoked religious and cultural symbols in the Islamic world, and later became associated with environmental movements. Black represented mourning, or was the official color of fascist movements, e.g. Mussolini's black shirts, and, today, is associated with anarchist and dissenting groups. Flags are among the most concentrated manifestations of color symbolism. Each nation's flag communicates history, values, and power through a visual language of color. For instance, Germany's black-red-yellow flag reflects ideals of freedom and republicanism. The stars and stripes of the United States in red, white, and blue symbolize liberty, unity, and justice. Color also became central to propaganda tools. Totalitarian regimes consciously employed color to influence mass psychology. The Nazi red background with a black swastika was designed to evoke authority mixed with fear. In communist regimes, red symbolized the universal struggle of workers and peasants. Even today, political party logos, flags, and campaign designs rely heavily on color codes. Right or left-wing, liberal or conservative, ecological or nationalist tendencies. Often, all can be read through a color palette. In conclusion, color has not been merely the backdrop of politics. It has become an actor itself. Wars, revolutions, and peace negotiated through color are permanently etched into humanity's collective memory. Color in psychology, perception, emotion, and marketing. Color choices in advertising, cultural codes, and individual effects. Color is not just a visual stimulus. It is a powerful psychological tool that influences emotions, behavior, and decision-making processes. The human brain perceives colors not only visually, but also associates them with emotions, memories, and cultural codes. For this reason, colors have become strategic elements both in individual experiences and mass communication. Psychologically, red increases heart rate, is stimulating, and draws attention. It is therefore used in emergency buttons, discount signs, and many other applications. Blue evokes trust and loyalty, making it a popular choice for banks and healthcare institutions. Yellow represents energy and optimism, but can cause anxiety if overused. Green evokes nature, tranquility, and balance, while black symbolizes power, sophistication, or even darkness and mourning. These effects vary across cultures. For example, white symbolizes purity and innocence in the West, but represents death and mourning in some Asian cultures. These cultural variations demonstrate that color does not have a universal language, but carries meanings learned and internalized culturally. Modern marketing strategies deliberately exploit these psychological effects. The colors used in brand logos, product packaging, and in-store layouts directly influence consumer behavior. For instance, fast food chains combine red and yellow to create both appetite appeal and an energetic atmosphere. Luxury brands often favor black and gold tones to convey prestige. Colors also play a significant role in web design. User engagement, click rates, and purchase decisions are heavily influenced by color choices. Similarly, the color palette used in advertising campaigns determines how the message is perceived. On a psychological level, color is also involved in memory recall and emotional regulation. Practices like art therapy and color-based therapies use color as a tool for connecting with a person's inner world. In conclusion, color is not just an aesthetic element, it is a tool with psychological, cultural, and commercial impact. It guides perceptions, shapes preferences, and plays an invisible role in decision-making. Paints of the future. Biotechnology and smart pigments. Color changing with light. Eco-friendly paints. And the pursuit of sustainability. Although the history of paint began with pigments derived from nature, its future is being shaped by biotechnological and environmentally friendly solutions developed in laboratories. Modern demands require not only color production, but also consideration of environmental impact, durability, and functionality. Advances in biotechnology now allow the production of biological pigments using microorganisms. Certain bacteria and algae can synthesize vivid colors naturally under specific conditions. Compared to traditional chemical paints, these biopaints offer a more sustainable and eco-friendly production process. Additionally, since these biopigments leave no toxic residues, they are suitable for use in textiles, food packaging, and even medical products. Meanwhile, smart pigment technologies add functionality to paint beyond color. Pigments sensitive to heat, light, humidity, or chemical reactions enable color-changing wall paints that respond to temperature. textiles that signal UV exposure, or surfaces that act as sensors. Strategic applications of these pigments are particularly notable in automotive, fashion, and defense industries. With the development of OLED and micro-LED technologies, it is now possible for surfaces not just to be painted, but to emit light. Brightness, color tones, and energy efficiency are integrated into next-generation paints that function as electronic devices. Nanopigments developed in research labs offer not only aesthetics, but also multifunctional properties such as self-cleaning, antibacterial action, and odor removal. These paints are poised to revolutionize future living spaces, especially in terms of health, hygiene, and interior comfort. These advancements also carry ethical and environmental implications. Color has evolved into not only a visible phenomenon, but also one that leaves an ecological footprint, provides sensory experiences, and conveys information. The future thus points to a new era in which colors gain biological, technological, and cognitive dimensions beyond mere aesthetics. The history of colors is not limited to the pigments provided by nature. This journey, spanning from cave walls to royal palaces, from revolutionary squares to modern laboratories, reflects humanity's aesthetic pursuits, beliefs, power struggles, and scientific curiosity. Color has at times been a sacred symbol, a political tool, or an indispensable part of everyday life. Today, we are coloring the future with biotechnology and smart pigments. Perhaps each hue now shows us not only the world, but also who we are and the kind of future we envision.